All right, ladies and gents, we have made it to the big stage. You can see behind me, we are in a theater, and just to give context, we're in the main theater of Madrid. So Madrid, if you don't know my backstory, this is where it all began. My journey began, I was here a decade ago, came here as a student, and now obviously you see my life, private jets, the watches, the cars, the extravagance, but also growing businesses, growing one of the biggest podcasts in the trading space, and building businesses, trading, and creating this life for myself. And what a full circle moment that it is, that I came here a decade ago as a normal, young, unconfident, insecure, unsure, hopeful person, but really not really knowing how to grab hold of life. And when I came here, I had a lot of insecurities, a lot of things that I wanted to achieve, and this is the place that I found myself. This is the city that I created myself. This is the city that I formed myself as a man, or the traits that I wanted. This is where everything changed for me. And therefore, it's quite symbolic for me that if a decade ago you told me I would be standing in the main theater, think of the Times Square, like New York Times Square, the Madrid equivalent, on the main street and the biggest theater, iconic theater in the Capitol building. If you search Madrid on Google, the Capitol building will always show up as number one. So it's so iconic for me, and this is, and not to brag, it's more to say life changes fast, and I want to speak about this. It's important because I came I had a normal path in front of me. The road that was in front of me was get a good degree, become a dentist, work a good job, and that was my path. And I took hold of myself, of the opportunities. I was a non-conformist, but I also wasn't an idiot. I wasn't just dropping out of school and taking huge gambles. No, you have to follow specific behaviors. And the behaviors that I've spoken about on length on different podcasts and so forth is a winner's mindset. And there is categories of winner's mindset. There is an absolute winner's mindset. If you remember the 4-minute mile analogy that I give that was broken, it was a limiting belief on everyone on earth that is physiologically not possible. And then this guy, Mr. Bannister, I think his name was, he was like, he's a nonconformist. He's like, I don't care what anybody says, I will break that 4-minute mile record. No one had done a record under 4 minutes. So the absolute winner's mindset is despite what the odds are, despite what anyone says, I will find a way. And then you have categories below it. So after that 4-minute mile was broken, so many people broke that same 4-minute mile, meaning to say they had an absolute winner's mindset, but they needed someone else to break the limiting belief. If others can do it, then I can do it. So the first category was, I will do it no matter what. Then it's, if others can do it, I can do it. And then the categories go on. So I needed that winner's mindset, and there is an interesting analogy, and my life is a format of that, is the time delay between the behavior a winner can have and the actual results of a winner. There's a time gap, and for me it was years, and for you it will probably be years. And usually what is happening is the bigger the W, the bigger the mountain you're trying to climb, the bigger the time delay will therefore be. So that's fine. I think a lot of people understand that, but it's the intensity that is the issue. People have big goals, big desires, and they attack it with intensity, but they want big returns really fast. And when it comes to trading, that's what everybody wants. You want to get funded ASAP, you want to make withdrawals ASAP, and you want to learn everything ASAP, and therefore you come in with intensity. Excuse me, it's an unfiltered, so we're not cutting that out. But once you've had that intensity, you don't project it on a long enough time horizon, and that becomes the issue. But usually if you can, for me it was a case of, I had these behaviors. In my second year of university, I started getting into trading, but I didn't have my results for 2.5, 3 years, where that's when it started to compound. And usually what happens is there's no results for a long time. It's really slow results. And then the avalanche, the snowball builds, and then it's faster than you can ever imagine. And the last 2-3 years of my life have been faster than I can ever imagine, with how everything's grown personally, financially, my own confidence. Just something like this, speaking on stage now in front of 1,000 people. I do it online, I do it on podcasts and these YouTube videos, and 50,000, 100,000, 200,000 people watch it. And just the other day, AP, Audemars Piguet, they give me and Alex and my friends some tickets to the Champions League. They had the best seats in the house, and I could look around and there's 90,000 people in that stadium. So loud, you can't see each individual person's face, but that's the viewership we have. But again, doing it in front of people is another experience. So, but when I came here, if you told me 10 years ago, oh, you're going to speak at the main theater in Madrid in front of 1,000 people, that was not me. I would get nervous to speak in front of my class for a presentation. And look, so to give it an anchor towards trading, the behaviors that you know are true, of the backtesting, journaling, all these things that are kind of generic are important. But the more important thing is the formula of success that I've given is not just time and work hard. It's a bit more. Let's do it in brackets. So you have good education, good mentors, a bit of talent, a bit of luck, a lot of hard work, close brackets, and then time. Time is that differentiator. But you need all these components. Luck is out of our control. We all have this unfair advantages. Being born in the West, being born a certain with parents that maybe can give you this helping hand, certain friends you may have, the university or school you go to, and the professor you connect with, and there's so many advantages each one of us have. And I have different advantages, I have different disadvantages to you. Some people have more, some people have less, but don't use that as a crutch. That's more to say your hard work, your talents, your efforts, your connections, your mentorship, and your education will all be amplified by your natural advantages. So lean into that. And what is such a liberating feeling for me now, that things have snowballed and you see me living a fast-paced life. I've been on the road for 9 weeks. I haven't been back to Dubai in 9 weeks. I've just been different country, different city for 9 weeks non-stop. 28 flights this year, and I'm recording this in the middle of September. I'll probably end the year on like 40 flights. That's an intense, fast-paced life, not a life I imagined. And I'm still at the same time, I've got a series of C-suite managers, so I just stay in touch with my managers, and then below them is a team of people. So I have a team of like 30 people. I have 4 or 5 managers that I'm in touch with. I have multiple businesses. I have my trading, which is again my main thing. I'm making content online. I have a podcast. I'm touring the world, making connections. This is a fast-paced, incredible life. But this is not the life I picked, and this is not the life I imagined. Meaning, say, everything happens faster than you can imagine. I want that energy, this life you see me live, and the excitement I have for life. I'm so happy, I'm so lucky, I'm so grateful that I get to travel the world, meet cool people, make money, build cool things, and I get to call it work. Because my alternate reality was I just picked up my degree the other day. It's going to be in the vlog. I graduated 3 years ago, but I didn't pick up the physical degree. So my alternative path was just to be a dentist. And holding that certificate for me, signed by the king saying doctorate of odontology, dentistry, was for me like the golden prison. It's like the golden handcuffs. Like, this is an incredible achievement, the golden part, but it is handcuffs. I would have been working long hours every single day, have no freedom, no time freedom, and I would have had a comfortable, nice salary. But I grabbed hold of life, and you can grab hold of life. There's nothing different I did. I just gave it time. And the difference is if you focus for outputs, meaning what can I buy, what can I achieve, what payout can I get, what, vanity metrics, if you optimize for that, the moment it takes a lot more time than you imagined, you will give up. And that's what I see more often, is that people come with big goals, big intensity, big effort, and then give up after 6 months or 1 year or 2 years. You need to give it intensity over time. And if you're always optimizing for outputs, meaning your dopamine, the motivation hormone, the neurotransmitter of motivation, of achievement is dopamine. If you're pinning that to outputs, when I get funded, when I get a payout, when I get X, Y, Z, you're always going to have a positive momentum, positive feedback loop, positive encouragement through achievement, which is okay, but you can't have a bulletproof resilience that another person can have that gets their same dopamine and sense of achievement and sense of self-worth and sense of confidence to continue on if they are focusing on inputs. If a person over here will only be happy and only be motivated when they get a payout, I'm going to outcompete that person because I'm happy if I do my to-do list on a daily basis, on a weekly basis. I have certain phases in my business, in everything I do. The team is here with me. They know that we don't just say, okay, let's do X, Y, Z. We say, this is phase 1 for the next 4 weeks, then phase 2, because you'll have a long list of things you want to do. You too, you'll have a long list of things, and you'll try and do them all. But if you have many masters, you're a slave to all of them. There's a saying towards that, meaning say you can't be subservient to many goals. You need to pick a goal, attack it with intensity, know when it's complete, move on to the next. It also helps with the feeling of being overwhelmed, which I have all the time, and I know you do too, of I need to do so many things. I need to study this, I need to work on my job, I need to pay the bills, I need to take care of my family, I need to have a social life. There's so many things, and you get FOMO. You're like, because you're not doing enough on anything, you'll always have this constant anxiety, at least the kind of mind I have. So to serve that feeling of not having anxiety, because you only have limited hours, limited intensity, limited mental capacity, therefore you can only have limited goals. So you need to attack your things with phases and have longevity, and you will always outcompete the person if you are focused on the inputs. I get happy when my team hits the goals, when I hit the things I need to hit, when the targets that I have of not trading outcomes. It's like, did I show up every day? Did I attend the London session every day? Did I follow my plan? Have I documented my plan? Am I checking myself in terms of adherence to my plan? Not just journaling, because I do believe the virtue in journaling is not in the act of journaling, rather in the reflection of it, the reflection of your data, reflection of your emotions, and seeing how that pegs to your performance. I need to do all these things. And this is a reflection of my own competence, and therefore I can have almost an indefinite timeline because I'm not concerned about the outputs. And you get such strong encouragement when you do get the wins anyway, whether you're optimizing for output or input. But when your wins stack, which they will, because when you start to compound one win and a second win and a third win, it's not just a linear path anymore. You open up paths. So for me, it was like I started the trading endeavor, and now look at how many million things I have. I didn't think I'll be touring the world. I didn't think I'd be speaking on stage. I didn't think half the things that have come to me because I was focused on the inputs, and life takes care of itself. If you remember that formula, I had good education, I had good mentors, I had good people around me, I had a bit of luck and talent, I had a lot of hard work, and then time. And the time, what it will do is amplify everything. So whatever view you have right now is like, oh, I just want to make 10K from payouts. It's a great goal. But in pursuit of that goal, you will become a different person. You will become a person that is able to absorb more opportunities, and therefore everything opens up to you. And I want you to be realizing that whatever effort you're putting in now, it's not just like, okay, when I put this effort, I'll get this reward and it's done. So this effort is setting a foundation for many goals to come. And these doors will open, which is why you need that immersion I always speak about. It's immersion in one industry, in one thing, in one goal. And as you go on and on, you'll meet people that you resonate with. You'll meet people that can help you out in certain areas. You'll make friends and have certain conversations and connect with people that can change your paradigms. And then your taste changes, your goals changes, and you navigate life in such a colorful way. And that's exciting. The life of a trader is not boring, which people think. It is boring if you're just sitting there and doing just laptop work. But if you are an open mind, a creative mind, a serendipitous mind, and you're connecting with people, you're putting yourself out there, you're meeting up with people, you're trying to find people that are above you and like-minded individuals, and put that over time, so many things will come of it. And for me, it's so symbolic to be back in the city that it all began. This is the city where I was putting in the sacrifice, the real sacrifice that you're putting in right now. This is the city that I was having those same anxieties of, if this is going to work out, if this is all a waste of time, should I just stick to my dentistry? Those moments where I was having the highs and lows, when I had the good returns and the blown accounts, when I felt lonely because all of my friends around me, they didn't trade. All of my family didn't trade. Nobody understood what I was doing. So it's a lonely window. Now I have everyone around me is trading, building businesses. Like, I have an amplifying environment because everyone's on my wavelength. I don't go out for a dinner and talk about campus talk and who's talking to who's dating who, and that was the old conversation. My conversations are now about religion, spirituality, health, mindset, growth, entrepreneurship, sales, business, marketing, trading strategy. Like, these are the day-to-day conversations I have. It amplifies you. But back then in Madrid, when I was a student, these were not the conversations. So I had to retreat. And what happens when you retreat and you don't have results? Because there's that time lag between winner's behavior and winner's outcome. In that time window where you're putting a sacrifice, you're isolating yourself from your friends, they maybe even make fun of you, you feel a bit alienated, and you don't have the results to show for it, naturally your inclination is to go into retreats and go back to your comfort zone, which is your friends, and give up. But you need to break through that. And I want this feeling that I have today of everything coming full circle. I lived in Madrid, became a man in Madrid, found myself in Madrid, have since left Madrid, gone to Dubai, traveled the world, made millions of dollars, grown businesses and X, Y, Z, but it all started here. To now come back and speak in this theater. Imagine your hometown, if you have the biggest theater in that city, and you're right now just sitting at home trying to figure out trading, and you know in 5 to 10 years you might be speaking in the biggest theater with 1,000 people in person. It's an incredible feeling. And if that doesn't motivate you, I don't know what will. But it's not just about the end goal, it's about how I got here, which is important. And there's a cool saying that I like, which is, everyone is jealous of what you've got, but not jealous of how you got there. Meaning, say, it's easy for me to post things online and for you to see, oh, Wakar's living life. Of course he is. Of course Wakar's doing X, Y, Z, it's Wakar. It's a very, and for other people online, I have the same thing, but it's not a case of these guys are lucky, special, or something different. It's a case of your results compound faster than you can imagine, but it's after a huge time delay. So it's a huge time delay and things compound so quick. And you'll be sitting in a spot like me now, just a decade later, which is not a long time, where life is unimaginable and your opportunities are coming to you that you didn't imagine, and you're having such high success, alhamdulillah, and you don't know how it gets here. You don't know why it's here. You don't know why this happened, but you just look back and said, well, I ate shit for a long time. I had a long window where nothing was paying off for me. And I wish I documented those days better so you could see, like, I have the same journey as you. I just applied intensity over time and had the correct mindsets, and things came into place. But the resilience and growth comes, and you can have a situation like this when you're maybe speaking on stage. I'm also going to, after the event, go to my university campus, pick up my degree with my family and do a talk there for you guys, just so you can also see that whole journey for me from another lens, from campus. But until then, I'm going to be speaking on stage, and I'll probably throw the whole thing on YouTube. Okay, ladies and gents, just continue on from where we left off. So now it's a few days later, I'm coming to the end of my trip in Madrid, and what an event it was the other day. I just got back from the university campus, gave the degree, the physical degree, to my parents, and had a conversation that'll be in the vlog, and also actually the experience of speaking on stage. So one key takeaway for me for that was I see numbers on the screen. I see 50K views, 100K views and so forth, but actually shaking people's hands and seeing how far people travel from. I had a guy travel from Argentina, someone from Italy, someone from Andorra, someone from Morocco, all traveling for the event. Insane feeling. And for me now, it humanizes this online interaction we have, and seeing that there's real lives at the other side of this camera, and the impact that I have, and therefore the responsibility I therefore have. I feel like I have a bigger job to do. I want to give more value. So that's why I'm actually continuing on the video from when we left off, just to make sure I give you actionable points to take away, as opposed to just a prep talk and a bit of theory. I want to get into some specifics. So upon the topic that we were speaking about, which is how to navigate this career, navigate this journey ahead, there's some key pillars that, timeline expectation, working with intensity over time. And if you're playing finite games, you'll always lose to someone who's playing infinite games. So finite games is, for example, when I can get funded. For a finite game is when I can get a 10K payout. It has an end goal. But if you're playing infinite games, for example, marriage is, you don't play marriage to win. You are married to take part in the marriage. So there are certain things we do in our lives that are in the participation in doing is the achievement, as opposed to the end goal. And if you can reorientate your mind as a trader towards that, as opposed to having these goals, which you should have, but rather being more involved in the day-to-day. Now, to give you some specifics and actionable points, this is going to be leaning into the psychology topic. And of course, we have a lot of things to talk about in psychology, and the things you see online, I'm going to leave that for the other people to teach you. But what I want to really speak about is the things that really work and the things that are a bit more important, because generally psychology, I've found when I was researching it, is all techniques, is all approaches that are going to be escapism, as I like to call it. There are ways that you can deal with your emotion or escape your emotion. For example, going to the gym, for example, journaling, meditating, cold shower, XYZ. All escapism ways of dealing with your psychology are great. They serve you in the moment, but they don't address the root cause. And when it comes to that root cause, we need to understand the paradigm that a trader's mindset should be. That's exactly what I want to instill. So if I'm to kind of embody what is that absolute winner's trader's mindset, what does that person look like, and how can we emulate that? They're going to have very specific ways of looking at life and ways of looking at the market. Namely, number one, they're going to have very clear understanding of expectation versus reality. And I think that's where all the problems begin. Everything I want to say in this video is like nipping at the bud, so that everything else that blossoms after that, all the psychological problems that come, we snip it early. So that number one is going to come from expectation versus reality. And that's going to be your greed that you fear, the overconfidence that you have, the fear that you have of taking a loss or entering a trade. These are all from what? Your expectation versus reality that led to a bit of a trauma. You had an expectation, you imposed your expectation on the market. You had an outcome you wanted, you were overconfident in it. It didn't play out in your favor, and it's left a remaining scar on you that's become an emotional burden. And therefore, that's leading to this disparity of emotions versus reality. And that's something you don't want to allow yourself to get into. And how do you nip it in the bud? The way I like to look at it is you have to imagine and visualize a trajectory. Everybody, one of us has a trading trajectory. And that's going to be something you need to come to really terms with. That trajectory is going to be your true edge. And now that's devolving yourself of all emotion, removing all remnants of human input, and actually looking at an objective strategy. You need to have a predefined plan. You need to have absolute clarity on when you execute. Traders like to say, I want to have a bit of manual discretion because I want to be involved in decision making, which is okay. There are certain discretionary elements you should have, but a trading system needs to be rather mechanical. And if it's not mechanical, it needs to be checklist orientated, so that you can have subjectivity in your checklist, but it's a checklist nonetheless. And when you have that checklist and system, therefore you can very easily derive data on that system. And that's going to plot for you norms. And for example, if you say, I've taken 3 losses this week, how often does your edge have 3 losses in a week over a 1-year data set? If you don't know that answer, the moment you are thrown with that scenario of I've just taken 3 losses this week, you're going to feel emotional because it's an unknown territory. If you say, okay, I've taken 4 losses back to back, how often does that happen? If I've taken 5 wins in a row now, how often does that happen? Because every scenario that you will face, because remember, the market has a random distribution of everything that's going to happen. The wins and losses don't come in a nice, ordinary fashion. They come in weird ways. It might be win, 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 loss, 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 but it's a 50% win rate. And other times it might be win, loss, win, loss. So we don't know how things are going to arrive to us, but we need to have a reference point. And that reference point, the way I like to look at it is, we have a P&L curve, it goes up and down, up and down. And over time, you want to be seeing profitability. But in the moment, it might be going up and down. As you zoom in on price action, a trend might be bullish. You zoom into M5, it's up and down. And that's exactly how your data is going to be for your edge and your trading system. And you need to have reference points of the outcomes that are going to happen in reality, as I just mentioned. Now, the reason it's important to have that line is because it's an important reference for you, not only emotionally, but it's an important reference when you deviate away from it. For example, when you take a trade and it's a trade you shouldn't have taken, but it ended up being a win, what's going to happen? You're going to be like, oh yeah, I might have just got funded with that trade I shouldn't have taken. You might have re-entered the trade. You might have widened your stop loss. You might have doubled down. You might have over-leveraged. All of these short-term decision-making that led to a favorable outcome, which can happen. We might have doubled down on a trade and it played out. We made double the profit, got funded. That leads to such an emotional high. That leads to dopamine. That leads to a positive feedback loop. What does it do subconsciously? Reaffirms that behavior, subconsciously encourages you to do it again, because you have a positive memory and a positive reflection and therefore a positive belief. And that's where things start to get wrong in your psychology. Vice versa, let's say you make the right decision 3 times in a row and it leads to losses. What is that subconsciously doing? If you are outcome driven, it's reminding you, I followed the plan, it leads to a loss. I followed the plan, it leads to a loss. Subconscious wiring is going to state that following the plan is not always the move to do. So these voices that you're having that are subconscious are coming from what? They're coming from outcomes. And that outcome led emotion, and that emotion leading to beliefs, and therefore new behaviors. That loop, it cannot be a cycle of outcomes leading your decision and behavior making. It needs to be process driven always. And this is the loop every single trader ends up in. You are either in that state, or you have been in that state, or you're about to enter that state. And it's an important way to solve a lot of psychological problems before they appear. And the way you do that is by understanding and rewiring this line that you're going to have, which is your edge. If you have a data set of 1 or 2 years of your exact edge of each trade model you'll take, and then how they integrate, and also knowing, by the way, if I have my A+ setups and I only take those A+ setups, that model type, what does that trajectory look like over a year? Now what happens if I take B+ setups too? Those counter trend, hedge, re-entry positions, you're going to have a flatter curve. But you don't want to be just isolating these separate trade models. You need to be knowing how to build it into a portfolio. And the reason that's important is because your rate of return. You don't want to be growing on the year in a steady pace. You ideally, as time goes on, as you've built a profit buffer, you can start to lean into more riskier trades. So meaning you take A+ setups in your first 10%. When you've got a 10% profit buffer, introduce A setups, B+ setups, some counter trend trades, some more risky trades, a little bit outside of the time window. You allow yourself to open up a bit more risk through trade types or through increased risk. I prefer this one, to increase my trade opportunity type, because I play the risk reward game. Now you need to know how and when to bring these things in, because let's say you have your A+ setup and you're very confident and you have the data on that, but you start to introduce some B+ trades. That's going to have an impact on your overall data and therefore new unnorms to you, because you're used to 1 loss every 5 trades. Now you're getting 1 loss in every 4 trades or 1 in every 3 trades, because you introduce a new trade type. And if you're not aware of that, if you don't have the data for that and the reference point, you will have emotional burdens. So how do you realign? The way I like to think of it, my reality, my trading truth, the only truth I will have in the market is not what I think, not what I want, not the outcomes I impose. The only truth I have is my data. And therefore, the reality will always converge towards that norm. So let's say my norm is 5% a month, okay? 5% a month. And in a particular month, I'm up 15%. I know that my norm is like this. I have temporarily gone up and I will naturally come back down towards my norm. Everything converges towards my norm. That is the only truth. So therefore, in the short term, if you get better results or worse results, over a longer time horizon, naturally will converge back to that truth, okay? So therefore, any wrong decision making, or by wrong decision, I mean impulsive decision, or away from your planned decision making, emotional led decisions of over leveraging, doubling down, taking extra entry, XYZ, all the things we know traders do, despite the outcome in the short term, which is, I might have had a really good month because I took these little decisions and got lucky. Yes, that's actually what happened. You got lucky. And the reality is the truth will always come back to the norm. And what will happen instead? Your norm will change because you're introducing bad behavior, and that bad behavior is only beneficial in the short term. In the long term, it doesn't work. Otherwise, it would be in your system. So when you start to think like that, you realize there's no benefit in the long term of me deviating away from my path, because any benefits I get are only short-term driven. And in fact, it might have a domino effect of worsening my edge. And when I remind myself of this, my absolute truth, my absolute reference is my predefined data. That's the pre-work you need to do as a trader to really resolve your psychology. The pre-work of actually having an edge, having a checklist, having a mechanical modeled out plan, having the data to back it, and then having a sample size of doing it in real life, because that confidence that you'll build from not only the 1 year data you have, but actually taking these trades in, day in, day out, and seeing how it does mirror with your data. When you come to a trade, it should not feel like a big moment. It should just feel like another day in the office. And therefore, I think it's essential to be having that as the reference. But what is the mindset you want to have? It's not just confidence. It's confidence, but not certainty. And that slight differentiation is important, because a trader, you are going to enter a trade thinking you're going to win. Otherwise, you wouldn't enter, right? But you need to be coming to terms with the fact that losses are part of it. And that's the expectations versus reality juxtaposition, because you subconsciously don't want a loss. You subconsciously don't think it will be a loss, and you're trying to manually override saying it could be a loss, but really it's not hitting your subconscious. So when it does end up a loss, even though you knew it could be a loss, the subconscious is hurt. And how can you override that correctly and actually be your subconscious aware? Is being confident but not certain, and also understanding that losses are part of this game, and rewiring it, because from your childhood, from when you were brought up, everything you were told was losses are bad. Losses means you didn't do enough. Losses means something bad happened, and therefore you should address that. I didn't pass my exam, therefore I need to study more next time. I didn't get the job I wanted, I need to prepare better for the interview. My relationship crumbled, next relationship I need to be better in XYZ area. It's always a feedback loop, but in trading it's not. In trading, you got to factor in losses and be unfazed and unchanging in your behavior. And that's the correct way a trader should address things. I've got a few notes on my phone of things I wanted to bullet point some things for you. And it's all around this idea of being not outcome driven, rather day-to-day input driven, so you can play this infinite game and not finite games. Another important one is emotional detachment. So emotional detachment is something that you need to really embody, and something that you really need to build resilience in. And that's not going to be through escapism. It's not going to be through meditating your way, journaling your way. You need to be okay and detached from your emotions, and it's easier said than done because we are humans. But how can you do that? So apart from the escapism techniques, the reality that I found that worked for me to actually deal with these emotions and detach from these emotions was actually reference point of data, reference point of sample size, and confidence derived from my ability to execute. Now, how can I boost this confidence on my ability to execute? Is not looking at the outcome of the trade as my reference on how I feel. Rather, if I take a win or loss, regardless of the outcome, you have to rewire my behavior. What did I do? Did this trade that I had taken, was it a correct trade? Did I follow the plan absolutely as I should have? And it was a loss. It's okay. This is factored in. This is part of the plan. My data reflects this. And this will lead to the yield I want. This will lead to the goal I have already decided from my data. So you should not feel any kind of way. And also in a win, you won't feel overzealous. You won't feel overconfident. You won't feel really an emotional high from a win, because you just check, did I follow my plan? And therefore, this is also going to be a nice reminder, a rewire, because if you take a trade and it was a win, but you didn't follow your plan, you are now going to almost punish yourself and say, this win is a temporary high. This win is a deviation from my norm, but it will come back down to my norm anyway. So what's the point? I'm now introducing bad behavior, and you really start to see the detrimental effects you can have from taking a win that was not part of the plan. And in fact, you punish yourself and say, this behavior was incorrect. I hold myself to a higher standard. I am a professional trader, a restricted trader, because a restricted trader is a profitable trader, and therefore I cannot allow this behavior to repeat. You need to be firm in your own internal dialogue. Now, how can you rewire that actually? It's going to be a bit more difficult, but you have to think, how are beliefs made? How are your beliefs that you currently hold, how are they formed? Well, they come from people around you, people you trust, like your parents, and your parents are going to be instilling behaviors that they think they are doing to protect you, naturally. But naturally, these behaviors that they're instilling become boundaries, truths, and fears. And therefore, for you to override that and deviate away from it is quite difficult, because this is a belief system that you have. And now, how do belief systems work? Belief systems, any belief system you will have resistance to escape from. And that belief system is going to be holding you in terms of emotions also. So when you come into a new behavior type, for example, the example we're just giving right now of try not to be focus on the loss or win or outcome rather than the behavior. It's easier said than done, but in reality, when you take a loss, you'll still feel pissed off. You'll still feel like, why did this happen? What did I do wrong? How can I change it? You feel all these triggers. But how can you actually get over that? It's actually just internal dialogue. And that internal dialogue is, the way I like to look at it, if I speak it into existence, if I keep saying it again and again that I need to be process driven. Did I follow my checklist? I did. Okay, then everything is fine. The first time it won't be an override. But the more you say it, the more you say it, the more you start to believe it, the more you start to feel it, and the more emotionality you have behind it, the more it becomes a truth. Because your truths are led by logic to emotion. You synthesize your inputs and it becomes an output, and that vehicle in between is your internal dialogue to internal emotion to internal affirmations. The affirmations is, when I believe it, it came true. When I believe it, it was true. When I believe it, it became true. Meaning to say, let's say I touch a fire, it becomes hot, and then it was actually hot. Now it's become a belief. So it's a payoff, it's a theory and payoff system. So the more you see this over time of, I followed my plan and then deviated towards my data, it converged toward my data, that's what I want, okay, good. That happens once, it doesn't feel too strong. It happens 100 times, you really believe it. And you know how you have like, oh, I used to believe that. It's still a belief in there. You still know it. You've just completely overridden that belief through new information. For example, like when I was a kid, I used to be scared of spiders. And that was a real fear, and I used to feel like they're a threat, and I used to be so petrified of them. But as I've got older and realized they're not of harm to me, I'm not scared of spiders, so I can say to myself, I used to be scared. It used to be a belief, but that belief is very small in my mind now. And that's what a trader will be doing. And it's always in reference to your data, to your edge, and being confident but not certain. These kind of behaviors are way more powerful than tier 2, level 2 psychology, which is, how can I deal with my greed? How can I deal with my fear? How can I journal away my feelings? Is kind of the approach, which I think is level 2, which is beneficial, but level 1 is much more important. Okay. Probabilities. So as we've been saying, this is another thing I wanted to touch upon. Probabilities is the lead of the market. Everything we do is going to be based on probability. We don't know the outcomes, and we can be certain and we can be sure of our data, but we can't also be certain in our data because market situations can change. And therefore, if you are coming into a market series, you're coming into a sample size of a new year or a new moment, you have to also be understanding that you can get decay in your edge because the market can slightly change. It can have seasonality. So you need to also be addressing your psychology from twofold, which is number one, individual emotionality and behavioral changes that come from emotion and deviation away from the plan based on emotion. Number two is decay of the edge, that the edge is no longer got it. And therefore you need to have systems in place to understand the increased losses that I'm taking or the decreased profitability that I'm enduring. Is this because I have not adhered to the plan? I, as an individual, am doing something wrong. It's a performance problem, or is it an edge problem? And performance problem is rather easy to identify because you should have a mechanical edge. You should have a systemized approach. You should have a checklist, and you should be able to review each trade and know, is this trade part of my plan, part of my data, and therefore part of my results? Once you've done that through a journal, which is the only way you can do it, then you know that there's no performance issues. Then you say, okay, I'm following everything correctly, but I'm not getting the results that my backtesting data and performance over the last year and actually real life execution that I'm ordinarily getting. Now over 30 to 50 trades, a larger sample size, there is a significant delta. There is a significant difference between what I expect based on the truth of my data over time in backtesting and reality, and now the actual reality I'm facing over time. That's when you've got a decay in the edge, and that's where you need to go. Well, you need to learn more and actually start to reinvent and actually start to change things within your system. So that's an important differentiator. And traders usually jump towards the other one, which is, I need to change my edge. I need to change my system. I need to look into hopping a strategy and so forth. And that's not something you should be doing so often. Stick out a system, find belief and confidence in that system, test that system, and more address your behaviors and performance. And don't look towards changing your system too much, because people change their behavior on a weekly basis. And you have no real truth then. You have no absolute North Star, which is your reference, which is your data, if you're always switching it up. Okay, to kind of finalize this point, I wrote some things about building confidence in data. Maybe I'll save that for another video. And the last thing I want to say, I have a bunch of things. Yeah, the last one I want to basically touch on is the letting go of the need to be right. Well, I've got like 50 bullet points. I'll save it for another video, but the need to be right, where does that come from? So we have fears towards losses, and that's covered a bit. But the need to be right, this is going to be very pinned to your upbringing, to your childhood. because the need to be right can also be pegged to love you received as a child. And if you were one of those children that was getting love and support and encouragement and maybe even rewards, you got some pocket money, you get to go on a vacation because you did well in your exams, you will start to feel like your love, and therefore how people perceive you, friends and family, your self-worth, that perception is tied in winning, in tied in achievement. And although when we are brought up in that environment, it's a almost correct way. It's a healthy, almost healthy environment because our parents want to support us, they want to encourage us, they want to give us love and attention and reward when we achieve something. And that's why you get a trophy when you win. That's why this is ingrained in our nature. So we are coming into an industry where we're supposed to accept losses, but winning is so tied into our DNA, into our belief systems, and it's also tied into how our reputation is, how our internal dialogue is, because again, we're social creatures. We are creatures that are part of a tribe, part of a family. So we want to be accepted by the tribe. We want our parents to value us, our friends to value us, and approve of what we're doing and see that we're doing the right thing and winning. So the moment you face losses, you start to feel more of an emotional anchor, because not only are you letting yourself down and it's not going the way you wanted, you also feel that echo with that internal subconscious dialogue of, my parents won't love me. And it's not, I know you're thinking that's not me, or that wouldn't happen to me, but the reality is it's all subconscious wiring. And this usually happens more amplified if you are taking the path of trading, which is already something that is a bit non-conformist, something not so ordinary that your parents and friends won't understand. You'll already feel a bit isolated. And you want to show your parents like, hey, I'm doing the right thing. This is working out for me. This is actually the right move for me. But if you don't have the full results yet, but you still have a chip on your shoulder of, I want to prove my parents, where is that coming from? That's coming from the little boy inside you that is, I want to have the approval and appreciation and love of my family. So when you start to become aware of where this wiring is coming from and why these thoughts exist, this attachment you have to losses and this attachment you have to win will start to dissolve, because you understand where that wiring is coming from. And you can also start to have open, real dialogues with your parents, with your friends, and instead of isolating yourself and now having these traumas and burdens and almost imploding internally because it's not going your way and you just feel like you're raging and hopeless and fearful and you don't know why, these voices they're coming from these areas. And sometimes just having a conversation with your parents and explaining what you're doing, how is it going, and being open and vulnerable that it's maybe not going so well right now, but this is my vision, this is what I'm doing, and this is the inputs, some steps I'm taking, so that they feel sure that you're not actually just gambling away or you're entering this shady, scammy area. Rather, you've got a clear plan, you're trading it, you're approaching it sensibly, you're approaching it with correct attitude, correct systems, correct mentorship, guidance, and you're trading, and you explain to them what's the difference in gambling and a strategy. When you have these conversations with your parents and you say, I need to give it time, this is the plan I have, these are the people I look up to, and this is how they did it. I wish I had these conversations with my own parents, because it would have made my journey easier. And the reason I'm saying it now is because I'm doing this full circle kind of conversation of flying my family out to Madrid to show them the degree. They still don't fully understand what I do and the trading and everything that I'm doing and the money I've made. They still kind of want me to be a dentist. And even seeing me speak on stage, they're still like, I gave them the degree and they were like, amazing, maybe you should go back to dentistry, maybe it's a good idea, despite everything I've already accomplished. And that's my fault, because I haven't instilled enough confidence in them to show them what I'm doing and to show why it's good for me, to show why I enjoy it, and also showing them the results, and also showing them that the reason your parents are like this, because they just want what's the best for you, and they see what you're doing as uncertain or they don't understand it. And when you bring that reassurance to your parents, naturally that calming effect you'll give them will be given a calming effect to yourself, because of that childhood mind that we all have. All of our beliefs as an adult are through childhood beliefs and childhood traumas, and we all have a little boy inside of us. So if our reward, love, belief systems are coming from validation of our parents, if we are not going manually and actually having these conversations to comfort that bridge of validation from our parents, you're going to have technical problems in your trading, because every time you are taking a loss, you'll feel it more amplified because you haven't had these conversations. The wins, this attachment to winning will feel more intense. This ability to detach from losses will be more difficult until you have these tough conversations and open up and feel vulnerable, because these people around you are there to care. They are there in your best interest. But usually, I'm speaking to probably mostly men. Men like to bottle it up. Men don't like to have these conversations. Men like to be firm, stoic, stiff upper lipped, and be like an alpha. We shouldn't show emotion. We shouldn't have these conversations. But these, in day-to-day life, maybe that's okay. Who am I to say? But in trading, it can be quite detrimental. And I say that because I did that. I lived that life. And now speaking a decade later, navigating the whole thing, these are the changes I would have made. So yeah, hopefully there's some value in there. A bit of a raw, unfiltered video, quite long in the end, but the part one in the theater you saw was kind of speaking on my journey overall and the advice I want to give you. And hopefully this one was some more tangible, really applicable drag and drop ideas with your trading psychology so that you can actually find something that's real, that I found super interesting, that actually helped me, that you can actually go and address rather than this la la land of journal and meditated away. There we go. Catch you in the next one.